You think family drama is just yelling and slammed doors? What if it spirals so far out of control that even the police have to step in? One cocky tourist thought his prank was all fun and games, but he had no idea how badly it would backfire. And trust me, this is just the beginning. Bradley Thompson, 34 years old and a walking definition of entitlement, strutted down the path near Buckingham Palace with his entourage of equally smug friends. The guy was practically radiating main character energy, loud enough to make sure everyone within a mile knew he was having a good time. Bradley's idea of fun, testing boundaries, breaking rules, and generally being the guy you'd hate to get stuck behind in line. Today, though, his genius plan involved a carton of eggs and one of the Queen's iconic royal guards. Clutching the lone egg he'd bought at some market nearby, Bradley was already imagining the viral video. He could almost hear the comments, "Legend," "Savage move," and of course, "What were you thinking?" His friends, always down to egg him on, pun intended, laughed as he pitched his brilliant idea. "Dude, imagine his face when I nail him," Bradley said, gesturing toward a tall, stoic guard stationed near the palace gates. That guard was Jason Carter, 25, and today was his first day in the uniform. Jason had grown up dreaming of this moment, but honestly, no one had warned him about the sheer chaos that came with standing still while tourists tried every trick in the book to get a reaction. He'd dealt with fake salutes, awkward selfies, and even a kid who'd tried to climb his leg like a tree. Jason wasn't about to let any of it faze him. After all, his future in the service depended on his ability to stay cool, calm, and composed. But there was something different about this crowd. The energy felt off, too loud, too rowdy. Jason's gaze locked on a man holding what looked like an egg. No, scratch that. It was an egg. Jason tightened his jaw, his pulse quickening just a bit. He didn't move, of course. He couldn't. Protocol was clear. Royal guards don't flinch, no matter what. Meanwhile, Bradley turned up the volume on his show. "Yo, watch this," he said to his friends, stepping closer to Jason. A group of tourists nearby started paying attention, their phones already out. Some of them chuckled nervously, others whispered in disapproval. But Bradley? Oh, he was living for it. "You think these guys are so tough? Bet he won't even blink." And then it happened. Bradley reared back and launched the egg, full force, directly at Jason. The crowd collectively gasped as it struck Jason's pristine uniform, the yolk splattering across his chest and dripping down his neatly pressed coat. For a split second, there was silence. Just Jason, standing there like a statue, and Bradley, grinning like a kid who'd just aced a prank. But the silence didn't last. Some people laughed, loud and awkward, the kind of laugh that covers up secondhand embarrassment. Others muttered things like, "That's not funny," or "What a jerk." Phones were still recording, of course. Bradley, basking in the attention, threw his arms out like he'd just scored a touchdown. "See? What did I tell you? The guy's a robot." Jason stood firm, his eyes fixed straight ahead, but inside, he was seething. Not at the egg, not even at Bradley, but at the situation itself. He'd worked so hard to earn this position, and now his first day on duty was reduced to some spoiled tourist's joke. But Jason wasn't about to break protocol, not yet. Meanwhile, Bradley's friends were howling with laughter. One of them patted him on the back. "Man, you're insane," another said, doubling over. The crowd, however, started to thin. People weren't sticking around for the encore. They could sense this wasn't going to end well, and they were right. The crowd around the scene grew faster than a line at a free pizza giveaway. Phones were out, fingers tapping on record buttons. And Bradley? Oh, Bradley was loving every second of it. Standing there with a grin that could rival a used car salesman's, he stretched his arms wide and yelled, "What's the matter, dude? Not even gonna flinch? Man, these guys are like statues." His friends roared with laughter, egging him on, pun absolutely intended. Jason, however, didn't move a muscle. His posture remained as solid as a granite statue, but inside, it was like a pressure cooker set to high. Every instinct told him to react, to say something, to wipe the dripping yolk from his uniform and confront Bradley. But protocol was crystal clear. No reaction, no matter what. So Jason stood there, his jaw clenched so tight it could probably cut glass, while the crowd continued to buzz around him. Then came the wild card, an older man in a sharp suit, the kind of guy who looked like he'd seen too much nonsense in his life to tolerate any more. He stepped forward, his voice cutting through the chatter like a knife. "Do you really think this is funny, young man?" he asked, his tone ice cold, as his sharp eyes locked onto Bradley. Bradley barely missed a beat. With a cocky chuckle, he replied, Yeah, Grandpa, it's called a joke. You should try it sometime." His friends howled again, doubling over like Bradley had just dropped the punchline of the century. The man didn't flinch, his gaze drilling into Bradley like he could see straight through him. But before things could escalate further, someone in the crowd took matters into their own hands, or rather, their phone. "That's it, I'm calling the cops," a voice said. A young woman, holding her phone up like it was a badge of authority, was already tapping in the number. Bradley's smirk faltered for the first time as he turned to face her. "Wait, are you serious? It's an egg, lady." "An egg? You're calling the cops over this?" he said, gesturing dramatically toward Jason, as if that would somehow lessen the gravity of what he'd done. Jason, still standing motionless, noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Two uniformed officers weaving through the growing crowd. His grip on his rifle tightened ever so slightly. Finally, he thought, someone was stepping in. Not for him. He didn't need saving, but for the principle of it all. Someone needed to show Bradley that actions had consequences. The officers arrived with all the authority of a thunderstorm, their faces set in no-nonsense expressions. Bradley's confidence evaporated like water on a hot sidewalk. "Oh, come on, guys," he said, his tone suddenly lighter, almost friendly. "It was just a little prank. You're not really going to arrest me for this, right?" The officers exchanged a glance, their silence louder than any response. "Sir," one of them said, his voice firm, "I'm going to need to see some identification." That was when Bradley's cocky demeanor crumbled completely. He fumbled in his pocket for his wallet, his friends backing away slightly, like they didn't want to be associated with him anymore. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it," he said, his voice wavering. "It's not like I hurt anyone." The crowd, which had been buzzing like a hive, was now divided. Some people were calling out their support for Jason, shouting things like, "You tell him," or "That guard didn't deserve this." Others, mostly Bradley's remaining cheerleaders, tried to downplay the incident. "It's just an egg, relax," one of them yelled. Jason, still silent and still, watched it all unfold. He wasn't angry anymore, just tired. Tired of being the target of someone else's cheap laughs. Tired of being underestimated. But he stayed rooted, his expression unreadable as the chaos continued to swirl around him. His dignity was intact, even if his uniform wasn't. Meanwhile, Bradley was starting to realize just how bad things had gotten. As the officers began taking statements from witnesses and examining the video evidence being offered up by eager bystanders, his attempts to joke his way out of trouble fell flat. For the first time all day, Bradley wasn't the one controlling the narrative, and he didn't like it one bit. The air around the scene shifted as the officers got to work. Witnesses were lining up, eager to share their takes on the drama. The older man in the suit, still exuding the kind of authority that made even Bradley's friends shrink back, stepped forward. He held up his phone. "Here's your proof," he said firmly, handing it over to one of the officers. The video was crystal clear, Bradley standing there like a kid in a candy store, winding up and launching the egg with precision. As the officers reviewed the footage, the crowd began to thin. The initial buzz of excitement faded into murmurs. People had gotten their fill of the spectacle, and now it just felt awkward. No one wanted to be around when the guy who thought he was untouchable realized he wasn't. But Bradley? Oh, Bradley wasn't going down quietly. "Are you serious right now?" he blurted, his voice just a notch louder than necessary. "It's a freaking egg. You really want to make this some kind of international incident? I'm a tourist. This was for TikTok or something. Come on." He was gesturing wildly, trying to sell the idea that he was just a misunderstood entertainer. One of the officers, a tall man with a no-nonsense glare that could freeze lava, finally spoke up. His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that silenced even Bradley's friends. "Sir, this isn't a joke. This is an assault on a member of the Royal Guard. You're coming with us." For a second, Bradley froze. The words hung in the air, and his brain seemed to short-circuit. Then, like a cornered animal, he switched tactics. "What? You can't arrest me for this. It's ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion." He tried to backpedal, throwing his hands up as if surrendering to some invisible audience. The officers weren't buying it. Before Bradley could come up with another excuse, they were guiding his arms behind his back. The metallic click of handcuffs was audible even over the murmurs of the remaining crowd. "You're making a huge mistake," he yelled, but it didn't matter. His protests fell on deaf ears. Jason, still standing at his post, watched the whole thing unfold. On the outside, he was the picture of composure, not a muscle out of place. But on the inside, it was a storm of emotions. Satisfaction that justice was being served, sure, but also a gnawing frustration that his first day in this prestigious role had been reduced to this, a joke at his expense. As Bradley was led away, the crowd finally dispersed. The energy shifted from chaotic to reflective. People were shaking their heads, muttering about disrespect and what some people will do for attention. Meanwhile, several witnesses were already uploading their videos. Within hours, #Egggate, or some equally ridiculous hashtag, was trending across social media. The fallout was swift. Bradley's smirking face became a meme, plastered across the internet with captions like, "When you realize actions have consequences." Jason's stoic reaction, on the other hand, earned him widespread praise. "A true professional," one commentator wrote, "handled with grace and dignity." Back at the palace, Jason's superiors reviewed the footage as well. By the end of the week, they called him in for a private meeting. "You did us proud out there," his commander said, clapping him on the shoulder. "It's not every day someone handles that kind of pressure with such poise." There was talk of a commendation, maybe even a promotion. Jason didn't say much. He didn't need to. His actions had already spoken volumes. And Bradley? Well, his trip to London didn't end with postcards and souvenirs. Instead, he left with a court date, a bruised ego, and a harsh reminder that sometimes humor crosses the line. The world loves a good joke, sure, but not at someone else's expense. How would you have handled this situation if you were in Bradley's or Jason's shoes? Do you think the officers acted fairly? Share your thoughts, drop a comment, and let us know if you or someone you know has experienced something similar. Don't forget to like the story if it resonated with you and share it to spread awareness. This story is created with a purpose, to highlight issues of respect and responsibility. It's a reminder that our actions, no matter how small, can have lasting effects. Together, let's work to create a kinder, more understanding world. Your opinion matters.